Zoom, 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 zoom. That's the only word on my on my head right now, because I've had a bunch of people ask me, assessment center this, interview that, and to be honest, I'm gonna try to give some new information this time because I did do a video at the end of season 1 of the internship game, last year, about how to ace assessment centers. If you do want to watch that, I'll put that up in the iCards in the corner and maybe in the description below if I can remember to do that, but it will definitely at least be in the cards. But one thing that is different this year that I can actually get some insight on, is the fact that it's virtual. It's all taking place on one of these this year. So I guess fundamentally, like, what's changed, and what is there to be wary of? So before I go into the specifics on like what I think you can do to best prepare for Zoom and virtual assessment centers, let me give you a brief overview of the actual assessment center format, and then kind of like what I said in the last video, but just bringing it forward again here so it's like in the same place. So essentially, what did I say last time? I touched on the group exercises, the case studies, which I've still only done like twice, and the different types of interviews. So let's start by talking about interviews. I'll start again with the quickest one. You have the technical interview. Technical interviews, as I said, I've only done it like twice, and they don't come up very, very often. That's because you only really get technical interviews for technical jobs, coding one, software engineering stuff, engineering in general, to be fair, technical interviews. And that's basically it. I know some finance jobs will ask for it as well, maybe like IBD or trading, or the jobs that are more numerical, but generally you don't really get technical interviews as often, at least not in my experience. So my best advice for that is just to know the technicals, do the prep. Generally, there's no way to do that other than that you should do it in your course. If it's not covered in your course, then obviously go over like how the trades, how do you value a company, or like how to code a directory, sorry, in Python. Like, just try and understand the necessary skills that are going to apply for your job. There's no real way to prep for that. You never really know what they're going to ask you. You know what it's going to be about, because if you're applying for, like, again, a finance role, they're probably going to ask you about like bonds or stocks and maybe stuff like that. But generally, it's there's no real way to prep for that other than by knowing what just know what you're applying for. And generally, if you're doing your due diligence anyway, you're not applying for a random role that you've got no background in, so you should have some sort of understanding there, regardless. The only other thing I can say is that for technical interviews, it's okay to not know what's going on. If you ask for help, that's fine. It's probably better if you ask for help. And the main idea is just to show your process. They're not really there to find out if you can get the answer right or not, because at the end of the day, they know what they're asking you. They know the answer to the question. What they want to know is your process. How did you figure it out? Let them into your mind. Let them determine for themselves, like, is this person, does he just know the answer, or is he capable of figuring it out? Is he someone that I can bring in today, and in 6 months time, at the end of the internship, end of the grad scheme, end of the whatever, would they then be super competent? Because at the end of the day, they know you're a graduate or a student, or first year, second year, whatever. They know you're not going to be super competent at this. So it's not necessarily about showing your competence as much as it's about showing your ability, showing your process. And that's essentially it for technical interviews. The other two will be technical, strengths-based, or competencies. Kind of the same. The only difference is the way it's worded, and obviously in strengths you're focusing more on the strength instead of the scenario, whereas a competency just focus more on the scenario than the actual what you took out of it. Again, I'm not going to go into in loads of depth, because if you do want to learn about that, you can watch the other video. But in short, like, what you want to memorize is the STAR technique, or the CAR technique, or the STAIR technique. And these basically are CAR. I'll go with first. CAR is context, action, result. STAR is situation, task, action, result. The only difference is they expect more explanation from the STAR in terms of instead of just giving context, saying like, oh, I was captain of a five-side football team. You give your situation. The team was 5 goals down, and then the task is like we had to score 6 goals to win the game, while I was captain of the five-side football team. So it provides a bit more context to the context. But that's essentially it. And then STAIR is a star with an E at the end, and E is for evaluation, or some people say star and then reflection at the end. So it's like situation, task, action, result, reflection. The E at the end, or the R, is essentially just wrapping it up. So you might say, I don't know, situation, we were 5 goals down in a football game once. The task is that we had to score 6 goals to catch up. And me being the captain, I took the action of subbing off our star player. The actions where you put most of your stuff goes into the action part. The action was I took off the star player, because even though he was very, very good, he was a bit arrogant, wasn't passing around as much. So I took him off, put on a second best player, a second best striker. But that benefited the team. This is your result part now. It benefited the team because the arrogance wasn't there, and we had a better, more free flowing team. We didn't win in the end. It was 5-5. took a lot out of us to get those 5 goals. But then this is where you give your reflection, But, I recognise that if I started him at the beginning, maybe would have had a better game all through 90 minutes. Or maybe it's a case of I got to sit down with a star player and tell him not to be such an arrogant person. That was a pretty good answer, right? I just made that up. But it's like, if you have the structure down, it's very easy to come up with an answer, even if you just make it up, because the structure is so well determined. And yeah, it's fundamentally just know how to structure your answers. It's not necessarily important what you say. Like, even though that football example is not going to mean much in a tech space or finance, it does show that I have an understanding of leadership. It does show I have an understanding of teamwork and skills. It does show that I'm aware, like I'm dominant and assertive. I'm not going to just let this arrogant guy take advantage of the team or myself. So even though, again, it doesn't show any technical skills, it shows them exactly what they want to hear. Like, oh, you're a captain, okay, that's good leadership skills. Yeah, you took off the strongest player. Oh, that's very, very assertive, very dominant of you. And it's more about, again, showing them what skills you developed versus the actual answer itself. No one cares about what you did. We want to know what you took from that experience. Yes, of course it is. Don't just give like 6 football examples in your interview. They do want to know about your academic background as well. They do want to know about your past jobs if you've had any as well, volunteering. But it's not so important. People always get bogged down, but I haven't got any experience, I haven't done anything in this sector yet. You don't necessarily have to. Sometimes you do, but a lot of the time you can get away with any generic example as long as, again, you show the skills that are important. And again, you structure it well so they can understand and interpret in real time where you got those skills from. Don't just say, I was a captain and we won a game, because what does that mean for your captaincy? Did you just win because of you, or did you win because of the team? You want to highlight the specific instances of where those skills were shown, not just the skill itself. So again, saying that you took off the star player, that's an action. You took off the star player to win the game. That doesn't make any sense. But it's something that's important, and something that, again, it shows the skills versus telling them you have the skills. Like, show don't tell is the way you should interpret it. And again, yeah, staying in structure so it's easy for them to decipher, like, okay, you said this here and that's the action, that's the result, so they can easily decipher like what skills are demonstrated here and what they can take from that experience. And again, before I go into the case studies or the specific like Zoom stuff, it's important to then show your personality more than your experience. So they care more about the skills you demonstrated and you yourself. Like, you don't want to come off as arrogant. You don't want to be talking like a robot because you memorized a script. You want to be showing passion. You want to be a bit bubbly. Hand gestures, eye contact. Eye contact, especially on Zoom and virtual assessment centers, because back in the day, that eye contact's simple. You're just looking at someone's eyes, right? Nowadays, you're looking into the camera lens, and it's like making sure that you're looking at the camera, making sure that I can see on the side here, there's like a little fold-out screen. I can see how I look. But, making sure you're in the middle of the camera, you're dressed smart for your interview, like dress as if it's a real interview. Again, look into the camera. If you have headphones on, make sure you're not doing this consistently, moving them about. It's just on your head. And you want to look presentable. Again, you want to make sure that you look personable. You want to show your personality, show your passion, show that you want the job. And more importantly, on that point as well, show that you want the job. Remember that you're there not just to show them who you are, but also to find out more about them. Like, if you have questions to ask them. If something's not making you comfortable, let them know that. If you're a girl and the guy's like, oh, hello, love, can you tell me this? You'd be like, don't call me that. Be assertive in yourself as well, because at the end of the day, you're going to be working there if everything goes well. And you don't want to be working for a company that you don't like, that is, potentially a toxic environment. So make sure you're assertive in yourself as well. Don't just like pull up and give your all for this company for no reason. Like, you're also in real time evaluating them. How is this person asking me questions? Is this person like smiling much? Is he just like taking notes? Oh yeah, this person's here. Like, what does that tell you about the company? And like, bear that in mind as well as you go into it, because especially online, there's no need to be, obviously you still want to be polite, but in the real world it's hard to be rude, I guess, or to do the potentially rude thing. If someone's being annoying or asking you tough questions or they're very inappropriate, it's hard to just walk out. But on Zoom, it's like, I've never been in a situation, maybe it is easy to walk out, but I've never thought about that. It's not like, I'm kind of bored here, this group, I'm in a bad group or whatever. If you're annoyed, you kind of want to just firm it, you come all this way. But online, it's like, if this guy is being stupid, they're asking you dumb questions, you start to realise now that, I don't really want to work here anymore. You can just close the laptop. You can just close it. You can just say, like, you know what, boss? I'm good. End cool. So yeah, just be confident in yourself as well, and understand that you're there to evaluate the company as well as they're there to evaluate you. And yeah, let's talk about case studies. Now, case studies, you don't actually do them very often either. Like, technical interviews, I've done 2, I think, in my day, maybe even 3. But case studies I've probably done I've done more than technical interviews, but it's not ultra common either. And the best advice I can give for that is like, don't get too caught up on the information. I mean, obviously you are supposed to read the information. Like a case study, for people who don't know, is they'll give you like some information, some data, some info or data, and they'll say like, read through this and then present back your findings. Or maybe they'll give you like a scenario, like I don't know, you're trying to build houses in an area, and then you can pick between like rural, urban, suburban, and I don't know. They give you different tasks based on information, and you have to like decipher. You have to make a presentation based on that information. Sometimes it's part of your group, sometimes it's not part of your group. If it is a group exercise, then there are a bit of different rules. You know, for example, you want to keep track of time. You want to have a different team member doing different things. One person to keep track of time. One person makes sure you stay on task. One person making sure everyone speaks. You can do all that yourself. You know, you can keep track of time. You can memorize names. Also, John, what do you think? You can make sure you're staying on track. You know, if there's like 5 minutes left, you can say, oh guys, just so you know, like, you know, I like what you're saying, but we should really start getting some information down. We've got 5 minutes left. You know, making sure you're on track, on top of the job is very, very important in a group exercise. But in a case study, if it's, maybe it's just you, maybe it's in a group. If it's just you, you want to make sure you don't get too bogged down by all the information. Just highlight what's important. The numbers usually important, dates, times, values, like prices of things. And then try to present that back to them. They care more about how you present it versus what you say. Obviously, don't give a wrong answer, but generally, it's not. There is no right or wrong. Generally, it's like just how do you communicate that back to us. Are you mumbling your words? Do you really understand what we've asked you to do? Have you extracted the relevant information? So try and like again highlight certain things. Write down what you need to write down, and focus more on communicating that and staying on task. If you're in a group project, again, make sure you're keeping track of time, make sure you're staying on track on top of the job, make sure you're bringing people in. Memorizing names in the back in the day would be an important skill. Because of Zoom, you don't really need to do that because names are usually on, you know, on the tab. It says like Jordan, Ebert in the bottom corner, but it's still important. It still is a good skill to be like, oh, you know, John, can you say something? You haven't spoken in a while. Maybe not like in that way, but you want to bring people in. And the most important thing, especially on Zoom, I feel like, or any online platform, but the most important thing is not talking too much. You know, being prepared to mute yourself if you feel like you're doing too much. In real life, it's not so bad because people can talk over you quite easily. I mean, that is a bad thing to be fair, but someone can tell you to shut up and you won't get any Zoom interference or whatever that you do get online. Whereas it can be quite hard if you keep talking and people may be muted. People aren't always as confident jumping in because they have to unmute themselves and it might be like all muffly and getting this interference. So be conscious of that. Obviously, it's important to talk. You don't want to just say nothing, but only, you know, try to only talk in concise ways when you're trying to get your point across. Don't just talk for the sake of talking. You are there to pitch something, to like, get information across, to show yourself in a certain way. So just make sure you're doing that in like a sentence, 2 sentences, and then that's it. Don't just go on and on like I'm doing now. So yeah, that's a general gist of like the overall assessment center structure and some like generic tips. Again, obviously, if you want more questions and stuff, feel free to ask me. But like, how does that tie in now to the virtual landscape? I know throughout the video I've kind of touched on certain things like making eye contact and looking into the camera, making sure you look presentable, dressing as if it's a real world interview, being conscious of talking too much, or being, you know, being prepared to mute yourself if necessary. But like, what is there otherwise that's specific to Zoom and online assessment centers? So I guess some of the obvious, you know, the basics that you should never forget is like, again, dressing to impress, body language is important. But some basics that people might overlook because it's online is things like checking the software first. You know, make sure you can log in. Don't wait until the deadline. Try and log in like 5, 10, 15 minutes early. Because if that's the wrong Zoom link and you got to email someone, oh, you sent the wrong link, the room doesn't work. If there's anything going on, you want to make sure you're doing that in advance. If it's on the day and you get there on time, you just walk in. If they're not there, they're not there. You know, that's on them. You're there, that's fine. But if you can be there on Zoom, you can be on your laptop and it just doesn't work. So make sure the software works well in advance. So as early as you can, try and make sure it all works well. Make sure your laptop's charged. My laptop's never died on me because it's always like a higher charger. I guess that's lucky, I'm always in my room. But I have heard horror stories of they're like halfway through the interview, laptop dies or internet goes down. Internet is a tough one. It does help to have your phone on hand if you need to do a hotspot. But internet is a tough one to fix because it can happen randomly. You can't really legislate for that other than having a hotspot available. But charge, there's no reason for you to not have a charger around. You always have a charger around, or just have it on full battery if you're out and about doing it somewhere. Making sure you have the right tabs open. Some people have like loads of tabs. I was doing it wasn't an assessment center, it was some sort of event. I can't remember what event it was, but someone was talking and then their WhatsApp web like just bleeps. It's not that big a deal. They just like covered up, said, oh sorry, they close it down. But that can look a bit unprofessional, especially if it's a known sound. Like I know some apps have like known alarm systems. I made that mistake in the past. With a specific sound for certain apps that can get you caught out. So just make sure you close down anything that doesn't need to be open. Sometimes it is important. You might need to have certain things open. And if maybe you're in a lecture or something, or maybe you have like an important chat on WhatsApp, if that's the case, wear headphones. Wear headphones so that they don't hear what you hear. You can hear certain things, they can't hear it. And again, if you do wear headphones, mine are quite far away. But if you are wearing headphones, make sure you're not, moving them about or like have one in one off. Just make sure it's like it's on and that's it. You're just looking at the camera, doing what you got to do, and you got to be persistent. One thing to note, I think I made this mistake once. I only made a mistake once because you learn from it for the first time. But I got like proper. I didn't put on like suit trousers, but I put on a shirt, tie, blazer. And then my room was smoking hot, and I was sitting there. I didn't want to move. I don't want to put my camera off, but I'm like, it's really sweaty. It's really annoying. So be aware of that. It should go without saying, but obviously know the temperature in your room. If you're getting hot, make the necessary changes before you start. Open a window or something. And yeah, that's basically it. There's not really much more to go off of. The only other thing I would say that should be a basic, but people forget it. Make sure you're not muted when you're talking. Make sure your camera's on. I would say at all times, but I appreciate people aren't always comfortable with having the camera on. But it does reflect badly, I think, if it's not on us. I don't know that for sure, but I imagine they do want to see you. It does make you. It's easier to be personable if they can see you than not. So always try and have your camera on. Also try and have your microphone unmuted if you are talking. And yeah, that's basically it. Not much really changes virtually other than the fact that you have to use this technology to do it. And then again, with that comes additional precautions like making sure it's charged, internet's connected, etc., etc. But fundamentally, an online assessment center is exactly the same as an inline assessment center, an offline assessment center. Again, the only difference is that your medium of communication is different, but the actual event, the actual circumstance is pretty much identical. So yeah. You can go back and watch your video again if you want to watch it. I do give a bit more depth to the assessment center. Assessment center's, I guess, structure, formula, whatever in general. But yeah, that's essentially it for this video. One more, I'm going to do LinkedIn next. So you probably recognize this jumper from last time. Shout out to Rick and Morty. I'm going to do a LinkedIn video real quick. Today's the 29th of April, so let me just. The video is basically done, but I do want to give you guys some updates while I'm here. So Saturday, 1st of May will be the PwC one, which you would have seen already. The 8th will be this video, which is assessment centers, and then the 15th will be LinkedIn internship game. That's most likely going to be the last video. The 22nd will be 2 days before my exams start on the 24th, so you probably won't see a video on the 22nd. That would be like a week break, but we move. I'm expecting big things from the 29th onwards. Of course, I turned 23 on June the 1st, so shout out to me in advance. I'm going to be watching this in the future for no reason. But yeah, yeah, that's it from me. Hope you guys have enjoyed it, and I will talk to you some point in June. Peace.